Good evening. My name is Erin Baker, and on behalf of the 36 members of the National Alumni Board, it is my pleasure as President of the Alumni Association to welcome you to the Trinity University Alumni Awards Dinner. We're so pleased that you can join us this evening as we recognize our awardees, Ms. Jin In, Class of 1995, the Spirit of Trinity Award, and Dr. Tom Wilbanks, Class of 1960, the Distinguished Alumnus Award. We all know that Trinity University offers a transformational education for talented students today, and Trinity prepares its students to be adaptive, successful adults through academic programs that cultivate both intellectual focus and civic engagement. So it should be no surprise to you that we recognize two graduates who display these very same characteristics. I bet many of you saw Colin Powell when he was on campus as part of our Distinguished Lecture series. I personally find his leadership inspiring, and I thought that for both of our awardees, his words embodied their spirit of excellence. He said, "If you're going to achieve excellence in big things, you develop the habit in little matters. Excellence is not an exception, it is a prevailing attitude." I believe that the lives of Jim and Tom embody the excellence and spirit of these two words. We are especially proud to be able to claim both of these extraordinary people as alumni of this institution and are gratified by the example that they set for the students of today. Tonight, we are proud to honor two outstanding alumni. The Distinguished Alumni Award honors achievement and service that is recognized at the highest level, nationally and internationally. The award dates back to 1961. The Spirit of Trinity Award is given to a loyal alumnus or alumna who embodies what it means to be a Trinitonian. The award recognizes excellence in service to the community or the university. To introduce our first honoree, Jin In, with the Spirit of Trinity Award, it is my pleasure to call to the podium Chris Howland.
Thank you, Erin, and good evening. It is my honor to offer some introductory thoughts to you about Jin In and her work in the world. I first met Jin in 2011 when she was invited to campus to be one of two speakers to our Women's History Month as our Ruth McLean Bowman Bowers speaker. I immediately saw her fierce passion and how she uses her own life to speak with and for the poorest girls in the world. You will see it too in just a few minutes when she comes up and talks a little bit more about herself, or if she's not going to do that, about her work. Jin is empathetic, compassionate, determined, persistent, relentless, kind, bold, generous, and committed to empowering the poorest girls in the world. Janetta Cole, President Emerita of Spelman College in Georgia, says in her book, Dream the Boldest Dreams, the ultimate expression of generosity is not in giving what you have, but in giving who you are. Jin gives all she is every day for her cause. Jin was born to great wealth in South Korea, but a tragedy struck, and literally overnight she became poor, just because she was a girl. Her father passed away when she was only 7 months old, and since her father did not leave a will, the inheritance laws at that time didn't protect female family members. Jin's sudden poverty changed the course of her life. When she was 8 years old, her mother immigrated to the US, bringing her family with her. They settled in Houston, Texas, where Jin met a remarkable woman who showed her a new world, not bound by predetermined gender status, but shaped by one's individual actions. This woman became Jin's mentor and took her to the projects of Houston, Texas to serve the poor. In the projects, Jin learned that a poor immigrant girl, being raised by a widowed mother, can make a difference in the world. The seed of Jin's passion was planted when she was doing this work in Houston. Jin's mother also inspired her passion for empowering the poorest in the world. By Jin's account, her mother's life is more transformative than Jin's own story. Jin received a scholarship to come to Trinity for her college education, and as a math major, she traveled to Great Britain to study, and during that time abroad, she discovered what she wanted: to use her life and education to empower girls. Jin did not underestimate the power of her own experience and empathy as a way to understand the plight of girls around the world. She uses her life to speak and advocate for leadership training to empower the poorest girls to find their own voices. Jim Collins and Jerry Perez, the authors of Built to Last, say that vision is not analytic, it is intuitive. It is knowing in your bones what can be and what must be done. In other words, vision isn't forecasting the future. It's creating a future by taking action in the present. Lorraine Matusak, a leadership scholar and thinker and former program officer at the Kellogg Foundation, builds on Collins and Perez's work and says that vision is first a dream and then a set of intentions. It is not mystical or religious. It is a sense of understanding intuitively what needs to be done, or a better way of accomplishing something. It is knowing in your very being an outcome, a goal, or a direction, and being able to communicate that sense of direction with enthusiasm and meaning. It is being able to maintain a dynamic tension between what is and what could be. This is what Jin does. She is creating the future by acting now. She informs us about the untapped potential of girls in poverty through the girls' stories themselves and her own story. And she helps us understand the possibilities that can be unleashed if we empower girls to find their voices. She communicates clearly, simply, meaningfully, and with unbounded enthusiasm. You'll also see that momentarily. Jin's vision is to transform the world to a place of security, equity, and peace by empowering the poorest girls in the world, to transform these girls into future leaders, to empower the poorest girls to find their own voices, to become powerful agents of change in their countries and beyond. Her life also speaks of the poorest boys in the world. The boys as young as 11 years old in Africa, Ireland, Chechnya, and many other countries who are kidnapped or enticed to become boy soldiers. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade boys in South San Antonio, Baltimore, Maryland, Los Angeles, California, who don't go to school because they do not believe they will make age 18 because of gang violence. The boys that are sexually abused by people they trust the most. She is dedicating her mind, body, and spirit to empowering the most desperate and deserving children in the world to find their own voice, to lead themselves first away from poverty and violence, and then to become leaders, change agents in their communities. Jin works with hundreds of leaders around the world on this important work that is impacting boys and girls all across the world. Jin is a stellar recipient of the Trinity, a Spirit of Trinity Award, just as all of our award winners are. For more than 30 years, her passion, purposefulness, and commitment to improving the quality of life for the poorest girls in the world has been demonstrated over and over again. She is reshaping the thinking about leadership so that more and more girls can be taught to find and use their voices to serve others and create a brighter future for themselves and those who will follow. She seizes every opportunity in any venue to give voice to the value and potential of girls. I recently learned from Jim Laurie, class of 1963, that his father, Dr. Laurie, who served as president at Trinity University from 1951 to 1970, shared a prayer with the graduates at every Trinity commencement ceremony he conducted. May God, who made you by his own eternal purpose, guide you and keep you and direct and use you until the word of your life is fully spoken. I know that Jen's life is not yet fully spoken, and there is no doubt in my mind that she will use her voice in the spirit of that prayer to fulfill her vision and mission to empower the poorest girls in the world. Please join me in welcoming Jen in to the podium.
Well, I think the first time in my life I'm speechless. I travel around the world and passionately, without missing a beat, I'm able to speak to any wide variety of audiences, whether it may be government leaders or tyrants or the Taliban, but come here to accept an award, I'm shocked. I don't think I was ever given an opportunity to talk about myself. So for the first time ever, I had to prepare notes. Washington would never believe me. I'm constantly speaking with governments. So I want to thank Chris. That is just, I told her last night, I don't know what to say. I'm just going to turn to you and say, she knows more about me than I do. I also have to thank Dennis, Dr. Albert. He really has reconnected me with Trinity in such an amazing way, where I've been back several times to inspire students, to let them know that they're not watching someone up here who's done something, but they're watching one of them just a few years later, that they can also do something that's very meaningful and impactful. And I also, of course, have to thank my colleagues, Trinity alums, and really thank you for this honor. My dad actually during the award said, "Do you realize you're the youngest Trinity Spirit of the Award?" He's brilliant. And I said, well, Secretary Powell said, I don't see myself as a black Secretary of State, but I'm a Secretary of State who happens to be black. So I guess in this instance, I could say I'm the Spirit of Trinity Award, just happens to be the youngest. I don't know. But it does feel so good to be here. I was actually in Washington at the State of the Union address, again, advocating for girls and women in Syria and Middle East. And on Wednesday, I said, I'm leaving. I'm going to Trinity. I'm done. You guys can advocate for girls just for a couple more days. So it's so good to be back here. And when you're driving down Hildebrand, it really does feel like just yesterday. And then, of course, to see friends and my own year graduating here, to say, I came here and we saw your name. It's like really going back up, like I was just here yesterday. It's great. One of my favorite quotes is from Mark Twain, who said that 2 most important day in your life is the day that you were born and the day that you find out why. And this quote is so special to me because I know both days. And now I know many girls who don't ever know their birthday. And that's just because they're girls. And clearly, I don't ever get emotional when I speak either. This is really weird. And because their birth is never celebrated. And that's just because they're girls. And so today is also a very, very important day, besides the fact that we're celebrating this day, and it's the Lunar New Year. So 100 million Chinese are traveling, and along with that pack came 2 very special people in my life. And that's my mother, who obviously gave me my birth date, and the only father that I have ever known in my life. And they're here because my birth father did pass away when I was 7 months old. And then if I wasn't here, I would be at the UN, because today is the launch of 2014 State of the World's Children. And this year, it's dedicated to make every child count, and especially for girls. And when I was first working on this issue, people thought, oh, that's so nice. I was in Washington, and they said, look, she's advocating and championing for girls. And I got a very special position to work for the Secretary of Health. And this is how Washington works. Nobody's an expert. You say, I'll be an expert. And next thing you know, you're speaking to every single government leader, and you're their poster child. So I got to practice often and a lot about why investing in girls was so important. And in my lifetime, I've been able to see a Secretary of State champion for girls, world leaders champion for girls, and today we now know it is the world's most powerful force for change. If we want stability, peace, security, even for our own lives. And it is really amazing to me that my best friends today are people that work at the World Bank, economists, and the National Security Advisors, and the Department of Defense, and the State Department, because they know that the only way countries like Iraq or Afghanistan can be stable is if their girls and women are getting educated and they could become leaders. So I was just recently at a leadership conference with the Navy SEAL, and they said, you know, this is how we characterize leaders. And the ones that make into the Navy SEAL shows that they're incredibly courageous and they're resilient, and under no circumstances they quit. And I said, well, you know what? This is probably the reason why we're sitting on the same panel, because that's exactly who I work with. These young girls and women who have no opportunity, who have never been valued. They're incredibly resilient, and they're so courageous, and they persevere over so many things. So the thing is that I thought that this is something I can do forever, and a few years ago I found out that I actually have a tumor in my throat. And now I have actually become an even greater champion to truly create the next generation of women leaders. Because, as my dad says, who's very wise, Jen, unfortunately, even when you die, there will still be suffering of girls. And I realize that is the truth. And when you are a great leader and a visionary, you plant the seed, not so that you can see the suffering of all poverty and girls who would never have the opportunity, but because you know you've done all you can while you're on this planet. So I like to end with Abraham Lincoln's quote, which was also inspired by my dad today. Abraham Lincoln said, to predict the future, you create it for yourself. And this is what I was taught for myself. This is what I teach and inspire girls around the world. And I am completely convinced that when more girls and women become leaders in the world, it will be a peaceful place for everyone. Men, boys, women, girls, every single human being. So thank you so much. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This award also goes to all of you because you helped me be who I am today. Thank you.
Before I met Jin, I thought my wife Penelope was the only person who never stops for a second. And as you can tell, Jin's parents were commenting that when she goes to visit them in Ecuador, there's a special place that they go where she is still for a little while, but it's rare. I was just thinking that, you know, our best weapon against the Taliban is not our military, but is Jin. So we just have to get her in the right place. But she truly does remarkable work. Somebody asked her earlier tonight, where do you live? And she paused and said, well, I have some clothes in Brooklyn, but she never lives anywhere because she's not in one place long enough to kind of live there. Her life is lived by serving others, and particularly young women. And it's that passion that is going to change the outlook for young women. Ron and I are both economists, and for a long time economists have been trying to argue about the wisdom of investing in girls and investing in women. Nobody listens to us. It's not about the economic evidence, it's about the passion, and it's about being able to sway people to change their behavior, and that's what Jin does every year. And so she truly is a wonderful and deserving recipient of the Spirited Trinity Award. And the award says, for her fearless leadership in empowering girls around the world, for founding an organization that transforms girls from the valueless victims of poverty and violence to powerful agents of change as future leaders, for overcoming personal hardships to become an indefatigable advocate for girls' empowerment with governments, UN agencies, and local people around the world, for work that has dramatically improved the lives of millions of young women, for the honor and credit she brings to her alma mater, and for exemplifying the spirit of Trinity University. Jen, congratulations.
Just one more note to your Trinity students, there's any, this is the reason why you want to change the world, so you can come back to Trinity and get a plaque.
Thank you, Jen. You make us proud. And now, to introduce our distinguished alumnus, Tom Wilbanks, we are joined by Lucia Street.
What a privilege it is for me to introduce to you Trinity University's 2013-2014 Distinguished Alumnus and my friend, Tom Wilbanks. Tom is a corporate research fellow at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Being a corporate fellow is sort of like being one of the leaders of a research staff of 1,400. Actually, Tom's occupation is very difficult to explain. This is not an easy thing. He is primarily a scientist at the crossroads of social and environmental sciences, but he's also a program manager, a provider of technical assistance, and an institution builder. So to me, all this translates to the fact that he has one foot in the world of research and the other in the world of practice, just one foot in each. If you were to go to the internet and look up Tom Wilbanks, you would find myriad entries. One, which includes, it's probably the most complete, his professional background, accomplishments, awards, and writings, runs a full 42 pages. So I encourage you to do that, to really learn about him. But with apologies to Tom for any slights, I am going to do sort of a quick hop, skip, and jump through this amazing vita, so we'll have time to hear from Tom himself. Tom received a BA degree from Trinity in 1960. He was very active in a number of student organizations, primarily student government, and that's probably where our paths crossed the most. He lived in the Holy Land. Now that might not be exactly what you're envisioning with that statement, but there were 4 rooms at the far end of the bottom floor of the men's dorm where 5 or 6 of the guys living there were considering going into the ministry. Now there may be other explanations for that name as well, but I am really so sorry that Colleen Grissom is not here. Not only could she have been recognized herself along with the Cowguards, but because she would have gotten such a thrill out of knowing that she struck absolute terror in the heart of a future Nobel Peace Prize co-laureate. Tom was afraid that he would not get Kay back to the dorm before Colleen clicked that lock. And believe me, she was quick and she was never late. Of course, we're not going to discuss the hour that she locked that door, because I see so many young faces, you wouldn't believe me. Anyway, I know Tom wants to introduce his family himself, but I do want to mention that Kay runs a very successful antique business out of their home and travels to Texas several times, so you may have run into her at Round Top or at some of the Houston antique shows. Tom spent the first 4 years after Trinity as an airborne Ranger qualified infantry officer, mainly in Germany, and then was discharged as a captain with an Army Commendation Medal. After completing his MS and PhD degrees at Syracuse, he joined the geography faculty there. And then in 1974, became a very young department head of geology for the University of Oklahoma. It was in 1977 that he was recruited by the Oak Ridge National Laboratory to lead its program development as the Department of Energy was being formed. Tom, after 35 years there, is still working full-time. He is an author, co-author, co-editor of 12 books or monographs, with 2 more in press, and at least 120 book chapters and articles. He is the past president of the Association of American Geographers, one of only 3 non-academics to have held that position in its 110 years. Global change in developing country programs that he has coordinated for Oak Ridge have led to more than 70 projects in 40 developing countries in the last 3 decades. He testifies before the U.S. Congress from time to time and gives a lot of talks nationally and internationally, and to a few schools like Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Oxford, and MIT. He frequently serves on and often chairs international committees and panels, especially for the National Academy of Sciences and the National Research Council. In the past several decades, Tom has been especially involved in a wide range of national and international energy and environmental issues and activities, including the International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This is the group that shared the 2007 Nobel Peace Prize with former Vice President Al Gore. Tom was one of the panel's leaders, formally recognized as a Nobel Peace Prize co-laureate. Frank Munger, who writes a blog called The Atomic Underground, said of Tom that more than anyone else, he has served as the conscience over the years for the lab, that he is a top scientist and a stand-up guy whose smarts are nicely paired with generosity, and it was a really good statement, and I want to remember what he said. Nicely paired with generosity and warmth, of course. I am so sorry. And I wanted to tell you that, even though I botched it, because to me, this speaks to Tom's family's values and the influence of his Trinity years. In fact, the roots of the Wilbanks family and those of Trinity have long been intertwined. Tom's grandfather, also a Dr. Thomas J. Wilbanks, was a distinguished Presbyterian minister who served on the board of trustees for Trinity University at the time the university made the decision to move to this campus. Tom's father, 2 Wilbanks uncles, and an aunt attended Trinity, as well as a cousin, also Tom Wilbanks, who graduated 3 years before our honoree. His brother Dana graduated in '62 and his sister Beth in '66. So you can see when Tom was offered a 4-year Presbyterian scholarship to any Presbyterian-affiliated university in the nation, where was he going to go? This special evening is an amazing coming together of Trinity's history and the university's future. As the grandson of one of those who had the vision to move the university to this site, will have a plaque recognizing his award in Trinity's newest, remarkable, and futuristic Center for Sciences and Innovation. How very appropriate that has come full circle. And now we'd like to ask Dr. Alberg and Tom to come forward so that we can properly salute Tom.
So Tom, if you would join me at the podium. And I have to tell you that this is a special treat for me to stand here with you because shortly after I joined the faculty at the University of Colorado, the new incoming president wowed the faculty at Boulder, which contained some of Tom's colleagues who had worked on the work leading up to the Nobel Prize. His opening statement was, well, I've heard of this climate change stuff and it's a bunch of, as the English would say, rubbish, but he's a colorful Coloradan and he used something a little stronger. And I thought that was a spectacularly bad way to start a presidency. But he's still there today, he has changed his mind. And then, of course, I moved to the fine state of Texas, where we have a governor who said exactly the same kind of things, and I'm not sure he's changed his mind. So it is such a delight to be with the man that has caused discomfort to the 2 fine gentlemen that I mentioned before. And the award, the Distinguished Alumnus Award, reads for his ability to synthesize the worlds of scientific research and practice, for his distinguished academic career as a professor of geography, for his numerous publications on sustainable development and responses to concerns about climate change and clean energy futures, for his scientific work on climate change and ecosystem assessment at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, for his designation as a co-Nobel laureate for his contributions to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and for the honor and distinction he brings to his alma mater. Tom, it is a wonderful way to introduce the world to our Center for Sciences and Innovation, to have a copy of the Nobel Prize to our first, but definitely you will not be the last Nobel laureate, because your work and your connection to Trinity will inspire the young generation of students that we have who will travel through that building, research that building, look up and say, a son of Trinity won the Nobel Prize, I can too.
Dr. Alberg, Aaron, Jen, friends. When Mary Kay called me about this, I think she gave me the same instructions that Jen got, which was that I was not to give a speech about my subject. As easy as that is, I was to say a few things about what my background in Trinity has meant to me in getting me to where I am, which is much harder to do. So I'm going to offer a couple of anecdotes about how my Trinity background put me on a track to the things that have happened in my life. And I'm going to close with a couple of comments about how I think this award recognizes contributions by other people than just me. But first, let me say what a pleasure it is to be introduced by Lucia. Back when we were freshmen and sophomores here at Trinity a few years ago, one of our role models was Lucia Dixon, who was always willing to take on the hardest chores and assignments around campus, who accomplished every one of them impeccably with great style and grace, and was nice to everybody along the way. What a great model for us in trying to figure out what kind of person we wanted to be. Another role model, by the way, was Larry Street, who lived just above us in the men's dorm, and was another important example for us about how a person should try to be as we learn to live away from our families. I think these role models, these examples, are a part of what Trinity gave us that's been important to our lives. So thanks. Two anecdotes. First, I arrived here in the fall of 1956 as one of the greenest freshmen who ever appeared on the Trinity campus. Coming from a small town in Panhandle, where I'd been lucky enough to grow up in a household that had an Encyclopedia Britannica, a subscription to the National Geographic, and we looked at the Presbyterian World Book of Prayer every morning, where it talked about Presbyterian ministers around, missionaries around the world, and what was happening, what they were doing in their lives. And so I came to campus with this idea that there were a lot of people around the world who were very poor, and some people who were not at all poor, and I wanted to understand why that was so and what you could do about it. And so I showed up and I tried to figure out how I study that, and they said, well, you're supposed to declare a major, and they gave me a bunch of departments to pick from: economics, government, history, some others. And I thought, any one of those doesn't sound quite like what I want to look at. And somebody told me about a major at Trinity that was called an interdisciplinary major in the social sciences, where you did essentially a minor in three departments, and then you wrote an integrative thesis as a senior. And I thought, that sounds good, and that's what I did. And what that meant was for 4 years, I was empowered to sort of take some control of my own choice of things to study and ways to apply that knowledge. I think that empowerment changed my life at a very formative stage. So I went on out into the world, and my wife Kay will tell you that my life since then has been littered with a bunch of decisions about where to work and what to work on that had my colleagues scratching their heads and saying, why would you want to do that? One of them was leaving a nice, secure university professorship to go to the Department of Energy National Laboratory. But what it meant was that as I looked out at this great landscape of knowledge discovery, my Trinity experience said, you can find your own pathway through that wilderness. You don't have to stick with the paved roads that other people have built before you got there. And doing that in my life has meant that I've learned different things. I have developed different combinations of knowledge. I'm able to offer different insights when I get together with other people to talk about the problems of the world. And that is because of the way my professional life started at Trinity. We all know that accomplishments are a combination of ability and opportunity. And this kind of special background, this set of different approaches that Trinity encouraged me to develop, vastly increased the range of opportunities I've had to do some things that I say are mostly interesting and occasionally maybe a little bit important. So there's a lesson in this, I think, about Trinity. Trinity doesn't see new students as some kind of feedstock for an academic sausage grinder. It looks at every student as a unique person, tries to help that student figure out who they want to be, what they want to accomplish in life, and how to get there, offering a whole range of options for them in order to do that. Back in 1956, there were very few universities that offered options like that. Large universities are small. Now, a lot of schools do, but Trinity, I think, has expanded their range of options more than most that I know about, and it takes that responsibility of offering student options more seriously than most of the universities I know about. Okay, second anecdote. Fast forward 7 years or so. I'm a young Army officer in Germany, and I liked it. I was good at it. The Army had put me on a fast track to try to make me a general officer at a fairly young age, but that wasn't really where I thought I wanted to go in life. So I had to figure out, if I'm not going to do that, I need to get out and go back to graduate school and learn something new. Because otherwise I'll be captured by my success, and 30 years later I will still be in the military. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But what do? This is way before the internet. There was no easy way to find out what the options are. And I was in a small Army post in Germany where the only English language library I knew about was the library on post, where it was mainly offered fiction to bored soldiers who, if they weren't reading books, they were going out in the community to get in trouble. And so what I did was to write my college advisor, Dr. Everett. Dr. Donald Everett, American historian, who's remembered warmly by many of us who were here back then. I said, Dr. Everett, what do you think I should do? And he responded in a matter of days with a 7-page, single-space typed letter saying, what you're looking for is geography. I thought. I'd never studied geography at Trinity. It wasn't taught. Hasn't been taught at Trinity much since then. My last experience with geography was a junior high school course that I hated. Something about memorizing all the crops raised on the Edwards Plateau or something. But as you've heard, I tend to think of myself as a pretty independent thinker. But it never occurred to me not to do what Dr. Everett recommended. I wrote off to the 8 or 10 departments, the 30 that he summarized in his letter, picked the one that seemed to be the best fit, and the rest is history. I would not be where I am today if I hadn't had that kind of advice. And that sort of, I think, illustrates the second question about Trinity. Not only does it help students find their way through their experience here on campus in figuring out what they want to do and to learn, it builds bonds between the students and the university that have value in the long run, that continue to provide value to the students well after the students leave the campus. So let me summarize it by sort of saying for more than 40 years I have been swimming in a highly competitive ocean of global research on issues like development, sustainability, and resilience. That ocean is infested by a bunch of hungry sharks who bear labels such as Ivy League and Oxford and Cambridge. And in all that time, I have never, ever, not once, felt that I was anything other than advantaged by the fact that my label and my experience said Trinity University. Okay, let me just close with a brief comment about what I think this award means beyond me, myself. Every major award that I know of in the world, the Nobel Prizes, the National Medal of Science, and so on, recognizes that there are a lot of different kinds of achievements that are worth recognizing. And what they try to do over time is to award one kind of achievement one time, another kind of achievement another time, and sort of develop a portfolio of recognitions for the range of things that they think are important. So each award is not only for the distinction of that individual, but it represents a recognition that that kind of work is important. If that were not the case, my good friend, the late Eleanor Ostrom of the University of Indiana, who won the Nobel Prize in economics, even though she's not an economist, that would not have happened. Every year, a bunch of smart, committed people graduate from Trinity and go out in the world to try to improve knowledge about the world and how to make it better. They work at scales large and small, global to local. Some of them do very well financially by doing that, and I have a lot of respect for the Trinity graduates who've gone out into the business world and have shown that you can do well by doing the right things in the right ways, that you can, in a sense, you can do well by doing good. Many of these seekers after knowledge, though, have had to find their satisfactions in other ways. They've in a lot of cases, developed this whole series of achievements in their own lives and their own work. They're recognized only by their family and friends in a relatively small community that they work in. But I would argue that the total value of these accomplishments over time by Trinity graduates who've tried to improve knowledge and its use is one of the most important contributions Trinity has made to the world in its time, and one of its most important legacies. And so what I would like to do tonight is to accept this honor, which means so much to me and to my family and to us all, on behalf of this larger group of people who do this kind of thing, and to thank you on behalf of all of us. Thanks.